This video is a bit of a warning with respect to conduct that might amount to harassment or stalking. And I'm doing this video for a number of reasons, following the Alex Belfield video and his conviction for stalking, but also the discussion on Meghan and Harry, because I've had lots of questions and comments about both of those videos and the content within them. And particularly, I've seen lots of content, let's call them memes, about particularly Meghan and Harry, where those videos are manipulating the image, presumably with AI, which would be a very novel concept and method of harassment and stalking, but we'll come back to the definitions in a moment. And those videos are quite clearly set out to humiliate and degrade the people within those videos. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those situations in this video. But also, as a heads up, I have a partner for this video, which would help greatly in situations such as a personal story that I'm going to tell you along the way, which also might amount to harassment. My partner is NordVPN, but back to them in a little while. So the overarching legislation that I'm going to talk about in this video is the Protection from Harassment Act of 1997. Broadly speaking, everybody has the right to go about their lives free from harassment of any form or another. And Section 1.1 of the Act provides that a person must not pursue a course of conduct which amounts to harassment of another and which he knows or ought to have known amounts to harassment of the other. Now, for the purposes of this legislation, a course of conduct is any action on at least 2 occasions. So a one-off incident wouldn't count, but if it's twice, then that can amount to harassment. And the specific offence of harassment is set out in Section 2 of the Act, which is a summary offence attracting imprisonment of a term not exceeding 6 months or a fine not exceeding level 5 on the standard scale. However, very much more than simple harassment is the offence of stalking, which is set out in Section 2A. And very much more than that is stalking that involves the fear of violence or serious alarm or distress, which is Section 4A. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about both of those, but also as a sidetrack, just a little bit of guidance that's been put out by the Director of Public Prosecutions on images that have clearly been photoshopped, or somebody doxing, which is essentially taking some private information, making it public, and encouraging others to target them in any kind of harassment or intimidation or whatever. The quote from the Director says, "Social media can be used to educate, entertain, and enlighten, but there are also people that use it to bully, intimidate, and harass." The Director said, "Ignorance is not a defence, and perceived anonymity is not an escape. Those who commit these acts or encourage others to do the same can and will be prosecuted." Now, this obviously affects anyone that is in the public eye and is likely to be targeted in this way, because if videos or images are manipulated in some way so that they are grossly offensive, humiliating, or designed to encourage some kind of harassment against that person, anyone who participates in such things may be charged under the Serious Crime Act under the new guidelines for participating in some kind of hate campaign or encouraging an offence such as the offence of harassment. But it's the offence of stalking that I think many people misunderstand and many of you might find interesting, because I have a personal story that I've told you before which I found to be very bizarre and which my partner for this video, Nord, would have helped to prevent, but it wasn't active at the time, but I'll make sure that it is in the future. Again, I'll explain more about that in a little moment. So talking of the simple offence of stalking under Section 2A, the person is guilty of this offence if they pursue a course of conduct in breach of Section 1 and the course of conduct amounts to stalking. So what exactly is stalking? Well, there are examples in subsection 3 set out which are acts or omissions, things not done, in particular circumstances, such as one of them is one that you might expect, which is following a person around. But another one which people might not appreciate is contacting or attempting to contact a person by any means. So this might be by email, it might be by telephone, it might be by Twitter, it might be, well, any kind of contact whatsoever, or by any other person, because attempting to contact one person via their sister, their brother, their aunt, or whoever could be attempting to contact that person. And if it amounts to harassment and it's this kind of conduct in this sort of situation, then it could amount to stalking. The other examples include publishing any statement or any material relating or purporting to relate to that person or purporting to originate from that person. So if someone were to post something online to say this other person said it, when in fact they didn't, or even if they did and they are publishing this in a situation that they would know amounts to harassment, this could then be elevated to the offence of stalking. The examples go on: monitoring the use of a person by the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication. And linked to that one in sub G, watching or spying on a person. And this is where my personal story comes in, because you may remember I told you a story beforehand where I was shopping for new office furniture. And on this occasion, I, for whatever reason, hadn't got NordVPN running, but I was shopping for furniture. Now, obviously, my IP address would be visible to any website that I'm visiting that has analytics running on that website, and they can pick up my IP address. I think Google Analytics dropped it out some time ago, but there are many different pieces of software that will track your IP address around. And not more than about half an hour afterwards, I had an email to me, to my wife by her name, and my clerk by his name, to say, quote, "We noticed that Shensmith Law might be looking for some executive desks. We can know this as we've subscribed to software which tells us the companies that visit our websites, and it's GDPR compliant." Now, in reverse order, it wasn't GDPR compliant because I had not checked any boxes or given any consent whatsoever, tracking cookies and all the rest of it, because I never do. I've never said that they could track and monitor my information, not least of which my IP address, my location, and moreover, they must have taken my IP address and compared it with other bits of information that they may have found online somehow, and discovered that it's Shensmith Law, which is the name of my company, and therefore used that information, sent me an email, sent my wife an email, and sent my clerk an email, which means not only did they have that information, but they went hunting for other information as well and contacted each of us by name. All of this happened because I wasn't running NordVPN at the time. So what is NordVPN and how could that have assisted? Well, as I mentioned, every time you are using your computer, your IP address might be visible to companies whose websites that you visit. Whereas NordVPN essentially is a virtual private network, meaning that it will prevent them from tracking your activity online. It will prevent any kind of exchange of information like that. It will prevent them from knowing what your IP address is. So in my situation here, they would not have been able to take my IP address, they would not have been able to track me, and they would not have been able to then email me, which ultimately, I think, if they did that more than once, could ultimately amount to the offence of stalking. NordVPN has a policy of keeping no logs on their system of what you're doing. It provides you with online security, which I am most certainly going to use from now on, because to be quite honest with you, that email freaked me out a little bit. Because it's not that it's a new concept that people do track you online, but in this scenario, it's probably the first time that I had this company contact me out of the blue, essentially telling me that they are stalking me, tracking me around. And so clearly from now on, I'm going to make sure that Nord is active so that none of those companies can track me. Another thing I've only just found out about, which I think is actually quite interesting, there is an automatic kill switch. So if you feel that you are being tracked or you feel that your security is compromised, let's say you're in a public cafe or something like that, there's a kill switch which will kill the internet connection and stop any kind of access to your machine on whatever machine you use, whether it's Mac, Windows, or your phone, or whatever. And as a partner to NordVPN, you can get an exclusive deal at my unique link on screen right now, which is nordvpn.com/BlackBeltBarrister. I will put the link in the description as well. You can go in and click that link. There is a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it, use it, see what you think, and there's zero risk to you. So check that link out in the description below. And as I always say, I would not recommend something to you that I would not genuinely use myself. So I am genuinely using it myself right now. So back to the offences of stalking and harassment, and how does that possibly relate to Harry and Meghan? Well, whilst there are lots of videos obviously put out from their interview and Netflix series and so on, In the last few days, I've seen quite a few manipulations of those videos, which are changing effectively what they are saying, as though they are having a conversation with each other and ultimately humiliating and ridiculing them. So I would not be the least bit surprised if there is litigation that follows this, because there's obviously a parallel civil claim with any criminal claim. And damages can be claimed if someone has been subjected to harassment and stalking and this kind of thing. And looking at the recent guidance from the Director of Public Prosecutions, if social media is being used to bully, intimidate, humiliate and harass any person, or anyone who is encouraging anybody else to do so, could be charged with either an offence under the Protection from Harassment Act or under the Serious Crime Act of 2007 if they are encouraging others to do it. So if you get tempted to repost these videos, or if you get tempted to create them yourself, I would think very carefully, because in some cases, if that were to get particularly bad, it could be elevated to stalking that involves the fear of violence or serious alarm or distress, which is a very much more serious offence carrying a much longer prison sentence. In fact, the maximum term is 10 years. That's under Section 4A of the same Act. Now, simply put, this is an offence where the course of conduct, which is on at least 2 occasions, it amounts to stalking, which either causes the other person to fear on at least 2 occasions that violence will be used, or causes them serious alarm or distress, which has a substantial adverse effect on their usual day-to-day activities. Now, it's not going to be very difficult, in my view, for lots of these situations and scenarios to have an adverse effect on someone's day-to-day activities, regardless of them being in the public eye, or regardless of them having done the interviews themselves and so on. Depending on how prolific the videos are and the reach that they have, and who supports them and things like that, they could well lead to certain people being charged with harassment and or stalking, which is why whenever you see my videos about these events, I very often refrain from giving my own opinions, or if I do give you opinions, it's not necessarily mine, but I will give you both points of view so that it's a balanced argument, so that you'll see some arguments for and some arguments against what some people think and what some people counter. But then extrapolating this out to everyday activities, I see and hear, and we get clients coming to us with lots of social media posts, comments, derogatory comments, attacks and arguments online, which could ultimately fit the definition under any one of these offences. And very much more recently, lots of people have been worried about being stalked, as in tracked around online with their location, their IP address, their documents, and having other people remotely connect to their computer, take control of their computer. You probably remember videos that I've done before about Macs getting what essentially seems like a virus, although it's just unwanted software, which could take control of your browser and access information on your computer, all of which might be prevented if you use software such as NordVPN and the threat protection software that I mentioned before. So as I said, I genuinely use that software myself right now. I wouldn't recommend something to you if I wouldn't use it myself. You can get an exclusive deal for NordVPN with the link on screen and in the description below. Go and check that out. It's risk-free and it's peace of mind. And also there's a bonus if you would like to watch films or programs from other jurisdictions such as the United States. Maybe there are certain programs that you can't access that you would love to watch. You can do those with NordVPN as well, because you can remotely change your location. You can make the internet think that you're in the United States. So that's just a bonus because I think that's fantastic. It allows you to watch films from other jurisdictions. So thank you for sticking with me through this video. Be careful what you do online, be careful what you say, be careful the conversations you have and what you post. And as my parting guidance, I would just say, think before you post. And before you leave, make sure you like this video and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.